Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, April 26th, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about a brand new Fox News poll. Now, if you watched my video earlier today, we talked a lot about the generic ballot, so if you're interested in anything related to Democrat versus Republican stuff for 2026, we'll talk about that a little bit in this video, but I'd highly recommend that you check out the video from earlier today that comes from the same exact poll here. But in doing some analysis of a lot of the data points that we've seen from the generic ballot, I actually went into the crosstabs, and I found an even more interesting point that I do think is very relevant to what we talk about in terms of how the American public views Donald Trump's administration. Now, one thing that we have to acknowledge, and I think this is really what was exemplified by the crosstabs, is that on both sides of the aisle, heavy Democrats and heavy Republicans are going to feel a certain type of way about an incumbent president. If it's a member of their own party, they're largely going to have a lot of respect and a lot of appreciation and approve of the job that they are doing. And if it's the member of the opposition party, well, you'll find the results are quite opposite. And you'll start to see that what really matters is, on the margins, what the middle of America says, what independents largely say. Yes, it matters if 30% of Democrats say that Donald Trump is doing a good job, but chances are that is not what is happening, nationwide. But what is more important is looking at independents. And the number here, I think, was so incredibly alarming, I figured it deserved its own conversation. It deserved its own more thorough analysis, because it's not something you can just gloss over. When you see a number like this one, and you can tell from the title of this video what it is, but I can show you. It's right here. First question. This is the way it's phrased. Do you approve or disapprove of the job Donald Trump is doing as president? And what you'll find is that, generally speaking, amongst white voters, male voters, black voters, voters under the age of 45, all these things generally are what you might expect to understand, right? What we know about conventional American politics is that, generally speaking, a Republican president is always going to do better amongst wealthier voters, always going to do better amongst white voters, always going to do better amongst men rather than women, and always going to do better amongst a more educated class, generally speaking, or in some cases, actually, with Donald Trump, it's the opposite on that front. But the point is that there wasn't much really to unpack there. And also, the crosstabs on race is a lot more difficult than doing it on crosstabs of party affiliation, because party affiliations, you can go into three buckets: Dem, Republican, Independent. And it's about a third for each bucket, typically speaking. When it comes down to race, sometimes it's down to 6%, 10%, right? 8%. It's a little more tricky because, just in some cases, surveys with 400, 500, even 1,000 respondents, a handful of people could really skew a crosstab. But when you're talking about a third of this polling chunk here, finding that amongst registered independents in this poll, 73% say they disapprove of the job that Donald Trump is doing. Let's say that again. 73% of independents say, I disapprove of the job that Donald Trump is doing. Wow. That's nearly a 50-point delta and a 24-point swing in the negative from the last time Fox News ran this survey. And I remember, I made a video. If you watch this channel a lot, you might remember it too. I made a video talking about independent voters a month and a half ago disapproving of the job that Donald Trump is doing. But it wasn't to the same extent that it was in 2017, and it wasn't enough that it raised the alarm bells to say that it could even get much worse, right? What it felt like back then was that was the low point for Trump. That Trump being negative double digits amongst independents probably wasn't going to get much worse. And boy, was I wrong. Today I present to you a 73% figure that could not be more clear that Donald Trump's policies and the executive overreach that this administration has shown is doing damage to the way that Republicans are viewed, that Trump is viewed, and that makes all the difference. The video I talked about earlier today also used the Silver Bulletin. This is Nate Silver's website. It's where I go to take a look at approval and disapproval ratings of Donald Trump. And you'll find 52% of America disapproves of the job that Donald Trump is doing. Just 44% approve. Now, in terms of net approval, it's been about a 7-point decline month after month, but he started off at plus 12. Today, he's at negative 8. That's a 20-point swing. Does actually track a bit with roughly 20, 25-point swing amongst independents we saw. Granted, in a faster period of time. But the overall approval rating for Trump in this Fox News poll is negative 11. The nationwide average is negative 8, so adjusted a few points. But even then, what are you at? 70% of independents disapprove instead of 73%. It's not much better. It's marginal at best, but it makes a huge difference in elections, and it makes a huge difference in the way that voters perceive candidates. We talked about the issue-by-issue basis that Trump has just simply disapproved upon, and the majority of the nation disapproves of Donald Trump on almost every single issue, barring immigration, deportations, and border security. Guns is a low point because not many people have a lot of views on it, but on foreign policy, Donald Trump talked a big game. He's pro-peace. That's his whole thing. The economy, huge thing, right? Day 1, no tax on tips. Day 2, solving all the problems with the economy. Day 3, inflation's done. Well, inflation, his worst point. 26-point negative for inflation. 25 on tariffs. Seems like they go hand in hand. But don't ask me, right? I'm not in the administration. I can't give you an answer to that. But what I can tell you is that Donald Trump's disapproval rating is driven primarily by independents. Because like I said, it is the left and the right that will always go to bat for their candidate, go to bat for their president or in opposition to one. But it's those people in the middle, the persuadable independents too, who might vote a little differently this time around because of the way they view Donald Trump. It's the same reason why in 2024, Trump was able to do so well. Largely speaking, independents disapproved of the job that Joe Biden was doing, as well as Vice President Kamala Harris. And although she did perform better than many expect Joe Biden to have performed, it wasn't enough. The administration at large was unpopular, and voters showed that. They rejected Kamala Harris in Nevada, in Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. That's just fact of the matter in the last election. But Donald Trump seems to be falling right back into the trap that led to his defeat in 2020 and the Republican Party's defeat in 2017, 2018, 2019, all because of all of these actions that Donald Trump is taking. And when it comes down to what this could mean on a tangible level, I really want you to understand that 73%, and I'm sure you do, because anybody really can, 73% is abysmal. This is really beyond comprehension, and that's why I think that there's a lot more that needs to be talked about when I see metrics like these, because they really do alarm me. They make me feel bad, and I'm not someone who's trying to say that I have a vested interest in this approval rating fluctuation. But it is quite an anomaly, too. Not even necessarily an anomaly, because I don't think the poll is wrong. What I do think it shows is that Donald Trump is an enigma, uniquely able to bring back levels of popularity unseen before right when he needs to win an election, and then it dissipates. Granted, Donald Trump ran a strong campaign, a rerun of the first two ones, and much stronger than any of the past, right? Susie Wiles very much kept Donald Trump in line. But now, it seems as if the actions are just too extreme for the American public. And so when you take a look, just simply put, about the way that people interact with this too, it isn't just that voters are saying, I slightly disapprove of Trump. You might see a lot of Republicans spinning their own poll from Fox News, showing that 73% disapprove, and when you actually look at the breakdown, it actually gets a lot worse. 54% of independents strongly disapprove of the job that Donald Trump is doing. Strongly. Somewhat disapprove is 18%. But of those who strongly approve, remember 54 on the strongly approve is just 11%. Somewhat approve is just 15%. That's where you get that combined metric of 26%. Meanwhile, 54% strongly disapprove, 18% somewhat disapprove. It is hard to see how, in this circumstance, with Donald Trump's approval rating, Republicans do well in the next upcoming elections. Because even amongst Trump's own 2024 voters, which approved of him in a way that they had never in years past, even in 2016, 9% somewhat disapprove, 2% strongly disapprove. Makes sense. It does damage, though, to the Trump brand. And it largely does damage to voters and candidates on the right who would like to see them win, Republicans win, in 2026. I don't like to use the shift map too often because I think that, there's a purpose to it, and a lot of it does apply to the national generic ballot. But on your screen right now are the 2024 House election results. Independent voters largely drove Republicans to victory in many of the districts that they were able to win in. Places like Iowa, places like Nebraska, where there were heavily funded Democrats and extremely competitive districts. But Republicans were able to win because independent voters sided with Trump and many Republicans down the ballot because they were discontent with Biden or a variety of different reasons, whatever it might be. Trump won the election and Republicans won the House. But if independent voters swing on Republicans, even just by a few percentage points, the map here shows, and it will continue to show, that it is very easy to see how Democrats win back House control in the next cycle. Here's what I'm going to do. I am going to shift this map by a measly 5%. And I say measly 5% because Republicans won this popular vote by roughly 3. If I shift it by 5, it would argue that Democrats would be winning this national average by 2 points. Even though Fox News poll shows 7, let's just run it to 2. And you'll see exactly why Republicans are really so screwed with numbers like these. A 5-point shift brings Democrats to a majority with 230 seats. Republicans at 205. This is a 2-point national popular vote victory when you swing the map from the last election. Let's do one step further. The Fox News poll, you can see, once we get to the generic ballot, voters voting for Democrats and Republicans. Promise you we'll get there. What you'll find is that voters will largely be more in line with the Democratic Party, but the map will get significantly better for the Democrats. I want to actually get here because I don't want to spend all the time just scrolling. So let's just go ahead and see Democrat. Maybe we can just do a generic ballot. Ooh, if I was to vote, let's see if they have. Maybe they don't have the question in this full release, or maybe I'm completely skipping over it. I'd like you, if I miss this, I can go ahead and just go back to it. But we can also see, too, just in the headline, about how voters are going to back Democrats or Republicans in the next cycle. So let's see here. We have voters everywhere. Vote. Promise you. All to say, I guess we're not going to be, let's see, satisfied is really interesting. Definitely people with mixed feelings. But taking a look at the numbers we saw on the national when it came down to Trump and the Democratic Party, won the national popular vote by 7. So if I was to shift it over by 7 points, what it would look like here, or by 5 points, which would bring it to a national victory of 7 points, it'd be even larger than the 2018 midterms that led Democrats to 235. This would be 238. Democrats would have flipped 2 districts in Iowa. They would have won one barely in Montana. But the point is that that national shift is enough to bring Democrats easily to the largest majority they have seen, since the 2008 elections. That would be phenomenal for Democrats, and it very much is within reach, all because independent voters are souring on Trump in a very massive way. The way that voters engage with Donald Trump seems to be quite interesting, I think, to many people, but it also makes sense. Donald Trump campaigns on promising everything, and people believe him. He doesn't deliver, he becomes unpopular. Republicans lose, Trump loses. Comes back around, unpopular Democratic president who voters feel similarly that they led on false promises or were ineffective. Voters elect Trump. They sour on him again. Only difference this time around, barring a constitutional change, is Trump won't be on the ballot again. But that's bad for Republicans too. Because if Trump was on the ballot again, a lot of these numbers actually really wouldn't matter. Because he brings out a certain type of voter that you're not capturing in the polls. He brings out a certain type of voter that might disapprove of the job he's doing, but just simply thinks he's a better candidate for the job than Democrats that will not vote in midterm elections, but if they are voting to, in some cases, are voting for the Democrats. That's how you ended up in 2014, or 2024, not 2014, with election results where Michigan was going to Donald Trump by 1.5%, but in the Senate elections, Democrats were still winning Michigan. How Donald Trump won Wisconsin by roughly a point, yet somehow Democrats won in the Senate race there too. And how Pennsylvania, despite being a state Trump won by nearly 2 points, only voted for the Republican candidate by 0.2%. And how a state like Ohio voted for Donald Trump by 11 percentage points, but for the Republican nominee for Senate by just 4. The Democratic Party brand is often more hindered when Donald Trump is on the ballot. Not often, is more hindered when Donald Trump is on the ballot. But without him, and a crumbling approval rating from those in the center who led Trump to victory twice, they are souring on a president who is going to then ask them this year or next, or in a few years, to vote for the Republican Party. And if these numbers stay the same, the GOP's losing the House. Chances are they set up Democrats to win back Senate control in a year where they really should be locking out Democrats from the Senate for decades. Probably won't happen, though, because of things like this. And I do think it's going to be very interesting to watch it develop over the coming months. But right now, Donald Trump is in a really bad position. And you can see it in the data. You can see it amongst those who very often are the middle of America voters. The swayable, swingable voters that backed Trump this time around, but backed Biden before, then backed Trump in 2016, but backed Obama twice, now might be backing Democrats because of the way Donald Trump is handling this administration, the way his approval rating is going, and the way that those who, again, are the most impressionable and most likely to swing their vote are really souring on a president by epic proportions, 73 to 26. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, and then a playlist for my 25 second Trump administration analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.